Hello, welcome to the Great Game Challenge. You're going to be seeing more videos kind of like this in the future. Videos where it's like, it's just, it's better, it's more edited. You're going to be seeing, this is like my top 20, who I think are the top 20 greatest basketball players of all time. So, hope you guys enjoy, and if you can, please go down there and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. At the number 20 spot, we have Giannis Antetokounmpo. The reason I have Giannis Antetokounmpo on the top 20 list is because I do think he deserves a spot. He is the best player in the league. He's a two-time MVP. The only thing that would make him even better is if he gets a ring, which, let's be real here, he probably will never get a ring as long as he's with the Bucks, unless they sign some superstar. But the reason I don't have Giannis in like a top 10 scenario or along with like other greats is because I think Giannis Antetokounmpo hasn't peaked yet. Look, an example of that is like LeBron James. He has peaked already. His prime has already happened. Giannis's prime hasn't happened yet. So I honestly think that Giannis Antetokounmpo at the end of his career will go down as a top 10 player. But for right now, I think number 20 is a great spot for him. Next up on the list, this may be a little controversial, but we have Ray Allen. Ray Allen coming in at 19, I think, is a good spot for him. You may think that this is a little weird, but hear me out. Ray Allen was one of the best shooters of his generation. You know what? Not just his generation, of all time. Ray Allen, if he was wide open on the court, he just automatically make it. It's just crazy the fact that he can just shoot it and it just goes in. Ray Allen was a 10-time All-Star, and he played 18 years pro. Do I need to say any more? Ray Allen is number 19 on the top 20 list. Coming in at number 18, we have Karl Malone. Now, I know one of the biggest debates has been which one was the better brother, Moses Malone or Karl Malone. But in my opinion, I do think that Moses Malone was better. But I had to give Karl Malone a little bit of respect. I mean, he is on the list after all. So anyway, Karl Malone, he spent 19 seasons in the NBA. Which, fun fact, 18 of those were with the Utah Jazz, and only one of them were with the Los Angeles Lakers. But out of those 19 seasons, 14 of them, he was an All-Star. Which means that only 5 seasons he wasn't an All-Star. And one of those seasons was with LA, and the rest of the 4 were just randomly categorized. But honestly, I do think that his rookie year should count as an All-Star because rookies aren't allowed to make the All-Star team, but he did make the Rising Stars team for Team USA. But yes, I have Karl Malone at number 18. Now for 19, 18, and 17, I actually had a hard time ordering these guys. But at number 17, we have Clyde Drexler. I was actually really close to putting Ray Allen at 17, Clyde Drexler at 18, and Karl Malone at 19. But then at the last second, I reordered it. But anyway, Clyde Drexler was a legend. Clyde Drexler, whenever he had the ball, he would either, no matter if it was a layup, a dunk, a three-point shot, or even just a standard mid-range, it would probably go in. I mean, he won a championship with Houston, but he was mostly known for the Blazers. But even with the Blazers, even though he didn't win a championship with them, he was still a dominant player. Coming in at number 16 is the brother to Karl Malone, Moses Malone. Moses Malone was a dominant big man. I believe, I don't really remember how many teams he played with, but I remember that he played with a lot. But Moses Malone was a dominant big man with the Philadelphia 76ers, and he wasn't as dominant, but was still dominant with teams like the Los Angeles Lakers and the Houston Rockets. Moses Malone is better than Karl Malone because even though Karl Malone averaged more points and played longer in the NBA, I do think that Moses Malone had a better career by far. Next up on the list, we got Isaiah Thomas. No, not that Isaiah Thomas. This Isaiah Thomas. In my opinion, Isaiah Thomas is one of the most underrated point guards of all time, actually. And he is one of the most underrated players of all time. Isaiah Thomas was amazing with the Pistons, and people don't really give him that much credit for it. Yet people think that he is one of the he's one of the most hated players in the league because of the whole Jordan scenario in The Last Dance. But you can't deny that Isaiah Thomas is actually a very, very, very good player. All right, at number 14 we have John Stockton. Now, John Stockton, no question, is probably a top 3 point guard of all time. Now, I will say, John Stockton is one of those players where, like, you don't really see him on a lot of, like, top lists, but I do think he deserves a spot on a top 20 list, and I do think he is a top 15 player. I mean, he beat the Rockets with the Jazz. I mean, they almost beat the Bulls with Jordan. And he was one of the reasons that the draft class with Jordan and Hakeem in it is one of they would say would win a championship if they were to be a team. So John Stockton, I do think, is number 14. He's better than Isaiah Thomas, but he's not better than the people I do think are ahead of him. Oh, and also, did I mention that he's the greatest passer of all time? He literally holds the record for most passes in a single game. Next up on the list, we have David Robinson coming in at number 13. David Robinson was one of the greatest big men of all time. He was part of the reason that the Tim Duncan-David Robinson duo is known as the greatest of all time. David Robinson won an MVP in 1995, which is actually very rare for big men like to win MVPs. David Robinson also recorded the second ever quadruple-double, which means that you got more than 10 points, more than 10 blocks, more than 10 rebounds, and more than 10 assists. Next up, coming up at number 12, we have Bill Russell. Now, I know this may be a little of a shock because you're thinking, well, he has 11 rings, so he should be like number 1, right? Well, no, not necessarily. You see, Bill Russell has 11 rings, but at the time that he played, there were only 7 to 9 teams in the league. So, and the Celtics had like all the star players. So, of course, they're going to win every year. Bill Russell was still a dominant center, and the reason he was such a dominant player was because he was the only player that actually rebounded. And what people don't know is that rebounding is actually a skill, and you need to be really good at rebounding to be able to be a really good player. So, Bill Russell, I have at number 12. I do think that this is a great spot for him just because I think that the next 11 players are actually better than him. But I just want to say that number 11 and number 12 were really hard because I had Bill Russell ahead of this next guy. Then I had him above Bill Russell. But the final thing was Bill Russell behind him. And I think you'll see why in just a second. At number 11, we have Julius Erving, or also known as Dr. J. Julius Erving, who played for the Philadelphia 76ers and the Nets for a little bit, he was a dunking machine. He became the first non-center to win an MVP, the MVP in 1981, when they also won the championship. When he won the MVP, he was 31 years old, and he averaged 24.6 points a game, 8 rebounds, and about 4.4 assists. And that was leading the 76ers to a 62-20 record, which would be tied with the Boston Celtics for the third best record in NBA history. Now we're moving into the top 10. At number 10, we have the big fundamental Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan is honestly the best Spur of all time. I do think he is better than David Robinson. He's won MVPs, he's won 5 championships, and he was a big reason why the Spurs beat the Heat in the finals. Tim Duncan also had an exclusive package which included bank shots. Most players in the NBA aren't even shooting for bank shots nowadays. They're just shooting for either a swish. And when they do bank it, most of the time it's just lucky. Tim Duncan was one of the only guys that actually went for bank shots. And like I said for David Robinson, he was the other part of that reason that the Tim Duncan and David Robinson duo is one of the best of all time. Next up, we got Big Diesel Shaq coming in at number 9. Shaquille O'Neal has played for a handful amount of teams. Some of the teams he's played for include the Orlando Magic, Phoenix Suns, Los Angeles Lakers, Miami Heat, Cleveland Cavaliers, and if I forgot any, then I'm sorry. Oh, and the Boston Celtics. But anyway, Shaquille O'Neal, I'm pretty sure he was able to win 4 to 5 rings, and he was one of the most dominant big men of all time. He actually holds the record for the strongest NBA player of all time, and him with Kobe Bryant or Dwayne Wade, he was still a very good player, but the older he got and the teams that he went on, he started to decrease in skill, but that could be just because of age. But young Shaq broke 2 backboards, which is actually more backboards than anyone has ever broken in the NBA. And in total, including like his entire career, he's broken 13 rims, and in his house he actually has like a tree or like a monument of all the rims that he has broken. Next up on the list, we have Kobe Bryant. Now, I know a lot of you may be triggered because you may say this is a little low for him, but I think this is actually perfect. A lot of people are having Kobe Bryant like number 1, 2, and 3 just because he died, but just because he died doesn't mean that he is the greatest player of all time. Now, condolences to his family, and I hope that he does good. It's actually been about a year since he's died, so that's interesting. Anyway, Kobe Bryant holds the record for second most points in a game with 81 points, which that's actually really impressive. And Kobe Bryant was also just really amazing with that final shot. And he was probably the most clutch shooter behind Jordan, honestly. Next up on the list is another hated player, Larry Bird. Larry Bird was probably one of the best 3-point shooters of all time. We all know that the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson debate has been one of the most heated rivalries of all time. Larry Bird was I believe a 3-time MVP, and he won a lot of championships with the Celtics. He's part of the reason that the Celtics have as many championships as they do. And Larry Bird was just a dominant player that could pass the ball, he could rebound, and he was a great shooter. He could knock it down from mid-range, or he could even knock it down from half court. That's how deadly he was. Just like Ray Allen, if you left him open, you were done for. He was going to make the shot. His hot spots were mostly the wings and the corners of the 3-point shot and under the basket. His cold spots were his right mid-range, his left close shot, and the top of the key of the 3-point line. Next up at number 6, which this was actually pretty tough between this guy and number 5, but at number 6 we have Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain, he was amazing. He won a couple championships. He holds the record for most points scored with 100 points. And most field goals attempted and made with 50. And some people say that Kobe Bryant, his 81-point game was more impressive than Wilt Chamberlain's 81-point game. Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. But I don't think that's true because, first off, it's 100 points. And also, Wilt Chamberlain, there wasn't a 3-point line when he played. So that means that every single shot that he took was a 2. And also, the free throw line didn't exist either. So if he got fouled, oh well. They would just get the ball again. And what's also crazy about Wilt Chamberlain is that out of his gigantic and long career, he never fouled out once. He averaged around 48 point. He averaged 48.8 points a game, which is 0.8 more minutes than he's literally averaging more minutes than an actual NBA game, which is crazy. Next up on the list, we got Mr. Earvin Johnson, or renamed to Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson sure was magical because, with all those passes that he's done, bro, he's just been amazing. In my opinion, I think he did win the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson whole debate thing. So I think that's also pretty cool. And Magic Johnson retired with 5 rings, a couple Finals MVPs, and even a couple other awards. Magic Johnson played his entire career with the Lakers, retired for the first time, then came back out of retirement in 1992 and finished off his legacy. Didn't win any rings, but was still the Magic Johnson that we all knew and loved. Next up on the list at number 4, we have Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. In my opinion, Hakeem is a top 5 player of all time, and here's the reason why. Hakeem came from a tribe or a community surrounded by Muslims. His parents didn't believe in drinking or eating anything until sunset, which means that he lasted the entire day, the entire game, without any water or any food before that or even during the fact. So the fact that he was able to put up 30 points a game and without any water is amazing. Also, he became the first ever player to get a quadruple double. He ended up getting 2 championships with the Rockets, went to the Toronto Raptors for his last 2 seasons of his career, but didn't really make that much success there. But he did end up winning a MVP and had a historical Houston Rockets career. His number did end up getting retired, and now number 34 can never be worn ever again by a Houston Rocket. Coming in at number 3, this was a tough choice between Hakeem and this guy, but at number 3 we have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, known for the hook shot, one of my favorite moves to use in basketball. It's just Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he could get to the basket, but he wasn't the best shooter. But whenever he was at the basket, it was done for. The hook shot was one of the best moves of all time, and it is one of my favorites. It was pretty much unguardable. There's only one man to ever block Kareem's hook shot, and that was Hakeem Olajuwon. But even though that did happen, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was still an amazing player, and he actually holds the record, I believe, for most MVPs, I believe. And I believe he retired with a couple championships as well. Next up on the list, we got King James himself, LeBron James, coming in at number 2. Now, I know this has been a bit of a discussion on who's the GOAT. Is LeBron the GOAT? Is Michael Jordan the GOAT? But as you can tell by my answer, I think LeBron is number 2. LeBron James is an amazing player. I do think Giannis is better than him, but if we're going off of career-wise, Giannis Antetokounmpo hasn't hit his peak like I said earlier. LeBron James has already peaked. His prime has already happened. LeBron James is going to go down as a legendary player, and who knows, he may even go down, maybe in the future he may go down as the greatest NBA player of all time. And knowing that his son, Bronny James, has the potential to be an NBA star, it's so great to see if his legacy will continue. And then coming in at number 1, we got Michael Jordan. In my opinion, Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time. He won 6 championships. He was just an all-time great. Michael Jordan, most people, when they come back from like a retirement or an injury, they just not the same. But Michael Jordan, he was like, I'm just gonna take it where I left off. Michael Jordan won 3 championships with Chicago, did a 3-peat, retired, played baseball, wasn't as good, but he still did pretty good in baseball. Came back to the NBA, 3-peated again, then retired, came back with the Wizards, still averaged around 20 points a game, and that's pretty good coming from a 40-year-old man. Michael Jordan had a bunch of clutch shots, and I do think he is the most clutch shooter in existence. People do say that Kobe Bryant is a better player than Michael Jordan, but I have to disagree with you guys. Michael Jordan, the stats just say it all. Michael Jordan, he was probably the key reason that Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman won their rings in Chicago. Honestly, in my opinion, I think if Michael Jordan wasn't in Chicago, the Bulls wouldn't have won as many championships as they did, and the Bulls wouldn't have built as big as a legacy as they built. Guys, that's my top 20 NBA players list. Make sure to leave a like on the video because this took me a while to make, And also, let me know in the comment section down below if you were to make any changes, what would you change? Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.